Doesn't matter what profession or what label you give yourself. We're all humans, and it's okay not to be okay. Hi, my name is Chuck Thus, and I am a former collegiate and professional goaltender and now founder and CEO of Compassionate Connection. And you are listening to Into the Stands.
Chuck, thank you so much for joining me today. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Dave. How are you doing? And thank you so much for having me.
I'm doing great. I'm happy to have you. So to start off, for those who don't know who you are and what it is that you do, why don't you kind of let us know?
Absolutely, and thank you again for having me as your guest. I'm very grateful. And as I mentioned earlier, Dave, I'm a former collegiate and professional goaltender and turned life coach. And my company that I founded is Compassionate Connection. And because of my journey, which I'm sure we're going to get into, I was really on a mission after going into a very dark, lonely place myself. To when I came out the other side, I wanted to give former or current and former elite athletes a place to go, somebody that they would understand what they're going through, the journey that they're on, and be able to have a conversation because they knew that I had been there and I'd walked
Yeah,
that walk so I could talk that talk. And so that's really in 2016 I had a conversation with a very dear friend of mine and was just coming out of my 8 years of figuring out who Chuck Thus was and why I was here and how I had gotten to the place that I had gotten to. And I when I asked him, is there a platform for a guy like me that had gone through what I had gone through on the ice and now gone through what I had been through off of the ice personally, if there was a platform for a guy that had this experience and this life journey to give back to elite athletes, both in youth hockey, junior hockey, college hockey, professional, and not just hockey, Dave. I should say it's all sports, but we just happen to be
yeah,
talking hockey today. And the answer was without a doubt, unequivocally, yes.
yeah.
And so that was really the launch pad to what I'm doing today. That's sort of when it all came together.
That's awesome. So you kind of talked about what you went through and more or less the darker places that you got to. So I'm assuming, looking at your past, that kind of started in college for you, correct?
It really did. And as I look back, Dave, I think I had some of the personality traits even as a young boy. I remember always wanting to I wish I knew that I was gonna make this certain team every year. How were tryouts going to go? I would get a little bit nervous before these tryouts, but I didn't think it was anything really too major, right? Everybody gets nervous before tryouts, so I never really thought too much about it. But it really magnified and grew and intensified while I was at Miami University, both at the rink, on socially, and in the classroom. And again, in the early '90s, nobody really knew what anxiety was. I didn't know what it
Yeah,
was. I didn't know why I felt so uncomfortable out socially. Chuck had never been like this before. And why was I having trouble taking all of the knowledge that I had studied so intently and been to every class? Why was I having trouble when I sat down at my desk for a test to take the information from my mind and put it on the piece of paper? And these were answers I just didn't have, nor did the professors that I was with. I remember, and I saw one of them this past weekend when I was back at Miami, and I said, I remember so vividly coming into your office after almost every exam and into office hours and you
yeah.
being like, Chuck, like, what's wrong, man? You're in every class. I know you're studying. Why can't you do better on these tests? What's going on? And I said, I really don't know. I can promise you that I know the material. And we would go through the material. And that would even kind of dumbfound us both even more because I would show that I knew it, but I really struggled taking it from my mind and putting it on the paper. And many years later, Dave, I would find out that it was test anxiety that I was dealing with.
Yeah.
And like I said, in the '90s, nobody talked about it. It was nobody's fault. I don't blame anybody. It
Yeah,
was just what I was going through and had no idea.
absolutely. So, talk about being in Miami. You were a member of their hockey team, and it's a school that is known for its hockey program. Multiple Frozen Four appearances and all that. Um, but you really didn't get any playing time really until your senior season, correct?
That's correct. I didn't get any. My first year, I was actually ineligible my freshman year because I had played in the Ontario Hockey League the year before, and the NCAA deems you professional if you play
Mm-hmm.
major junior in Canada. And
Yep.
so I was not eligible for my freshman year and 9 games of my sophomore year. But after that, I was. But never found my way into the net my sophomore year, and was actually cut from our program after my sophomore year and didn't know it. So I came back
Oh
my
wow.
junior year. Yeah, I came back my junior year, but Coach Gwazdecki, I did all the on ice or the off ice training, the plyometrics, the running, the weights, all of that stuff. But as soon as training camp was to start, my name wasn't on the training camp roster, and he said, "Chuck, you're going to go play for the club team this year." And
Wow.
so I only got to practice varsity about 6 times my junior year.
Wow.
It wasn't very much, and it was only when the number one goalie Richard Shellmistra needed a day off that they pulled me up from the club program. And again, many people may be listening and being like, "You can't do that," but back in the '90s, you could, and that
Good.
was something that was pretty unique because we carried 5 or 6 extra guys, and if Coach Gwazdecki wanted us to get some game time, he would send us to the club program. We'd play the weekend in club, and then we may be back in the roster, or those guys would be back on the playing roster the following Friday, but they didn't miss a weekend of games. So it was really quite
Yeah.
valuable back then. But yeah, and so even through my first 3 years, I backed up a handful of games my sophomore year when we were at home. But beyond that, I didn't see any time at all my first 3 years.
And so, do you think your time sitting out more or less for those first 3 years from the varsity program, do you think those pushed you? Because your senior year, you had a successful season. And I know there's a lot of guys, it would go one of two ways. Either guys would get frustrated and quit or move on somewhere else, or do what you did and just keep working, stick it out. Do you think that those 3 years kind of pushed you to be better and be as successful as you were your senior season?
I think 100%, Dave. And as I look back, and I can honestly say that I didn't really know what I did for a long time to have the success that I did. And I would be remiss not to mention the work that Mitch Korn put in, the belief that Coach Steve Cady had in me. Those two gentlemen played such an instrumental role in me getting an opportunity my senior year that I wouldn't have got it without the two of them. There's no question. But I'm also of the belief that what I did my sophomore and junior year, and even my freshman year, the work that I put in, the focus that I had, and I was operating, Dave, at a level that I believed that I was part of that varsity team and that I was a varsity player even when I wasn't.
Yeah.
And I operated as such. And I'm a big believer that when you do things like that, um, the world conspires in your favor. And that, I believe, is really what happened when Mitch Korn stepped up and asked me to work with him over the summer, and Coach Katie stepped up at the beginning of the following season to make sure that I was invited to training camp and I got my opportunity to play. And um, but I think when you do those things and you have that self belief, because I can tell you, even when I wasn't playing, I had an unwavering belief in my ability to play. And I've been asked I countless times, Chuck, you had no proof. Why would you believe in yourself to that level? Um, and my answer pretty much every time is it doesn't matter what others believe. It's what you believe about yourself. If you believe you can do it and you have this unwavering faith that you can do something, it does not matter what anybody else believes. Things will happen and things will conspire into your favor, just like they did for me. Um, when you have that deep belief, and that's some of the stuff that I work on with my elite athletes now, and because so many people, the world is telling us at every turn, Dave, that we're not good enough, we're not enough. This guy's better. Just go on social media for 5 minutes, scroll through
Yeah.
Instagram, and look how many
Yep.
people are quote unquote living the dream life or and here everybody else is grinding Monday to Friday, 6 to 6, and this guy's got his feet in there, or this gal's got their feet in the sand, like life is just all that in
Yeah,
a box of roses. Or you go on to elite prospects, and you see three guys with 100 points, and you're like, oof, yeah, I've got 20. I'm not near as good as that guy. But it's simply not the truth. I mean, this guy may play. He obviously has different skill sets. He's a completely different person. Plays in a different program against different people. There's a lot of varying factors, but the world always doesn't play those factors into account. And so,
absolutely.
so I'm just a huge believer in self belief, and that's something that I work on a lot with my athletes.
And yeah, I mean, as going off of even just the social media side of things, obviously I'm not an athlete by any means, but being a Blue Jackets fan and covering the Jackets, I spend a lot of time on Twitter, Facebook, and while I love our fans, I hands down believe that we have some of the hardest social media fans in the world. And I mean, I know it really hit our goalie Elvis Merzlikins last year and the year before, and um, honestly, one of the biggest changes that I've seen in him this season. He's having a great year. He deleted his Twitter, and
Yeah.
he's not seeing what people are saying and things like that. And it's amazing what that outside influence can do to a person. And good,
No, it's incredibly powerful both ways, right? Like they can, if they're saying nice things, it can really bolster your confidence. But most times on Twitter, people aren't looking to
mm-hmm.
bolster your confidence,
No,
um, whether they mean to or not. And I'm proud of Elvis for doing that. And because the one thing I've learned, Dave, throughout my journey, and I share this with my athletes as well, is no matter what you do, you're not going to influence what other people think one way or the other. They're going to think what they're going to think,
yep,
and you can't change that. Like, Elvis could probably pitch 3 shutouts in a row of 50 plus saves a night, and there's still going to be guys on Twitter that think he's garbage.
yep,
Ah,
absolutely,
and he'd be, if he was reading that, he would be like, "What do I have to do?" Well, you don't have
exactly.
to do anything, Elvis, because you'll never change the way that people think.
Yeah,
And I think that we're in such a polarized society that people are so steadfast in what they think that it becomes detrimental to the people around them. But also, I think in a lot of ways, it becomes detrimental to themselves because they're not open to another way of thinking, or open to giving a guy like Elvis a chance when now he has clearly brought things all together and having a great season, like you said.
yeah, and to stay on him for a second, everything that he's been through
Oh,
with the Kivy
oh,
situation and just all of that, like,
yes,
it's amazing to see finally him kind of coming around, and I've been on his team since day one. I mean, I love him, and being at the game last night and, him being first star of the game and just seeing him come out and, just pumping his fist, blowing kisses to the fans, like, it was great to see. Um, and, I think to go along with the kind of thing that you do, I think it's good for the younger guys to see that and see, just because you even if you have a whole bad year or 2, it doesn't mean you're done. Keep
no,
fighting, keep working, and, you'll come back around to it.
that's exactly right. And I often tell my athletes as well that it's about you. And I love the fans, because without the fans, we don't really have a game. But
Yeah,
but at the
exactly.
same time, like, especially with Elvis, this is about you. What do you have to do to be the best version of you? And someone probably asked him that, and he said, I need to stay off Twitter. So now, not only do we stay off Twitter, let's delete it so we're not even tempted to go on there. And
Yeah,
let's just stop the outside noise. And my hat goes off to him. I am incredibly proud of him. I'm so incredibly happy for him. He deserves all the success that he's enjoying. And
absolutely.
hopefully he will continue to stay where his feet are and continue to grind one day at a time, take it one shot at a time, and continue to have that success, because man, does he deserve it. He has been there and back. And now he's
100%.
finally getting his moment that he can smile, and I'm happy for him.
Yeah. So, at one point, you had to make the decision to give up playing the game, and I know that you transitioned into coaching. So, from was coaching always kind of a plan for you, or did you have other plans for what you wanted to do?
Yeah, that's a great question. Coaching was not in my plans, Dave, believe it or not. but my very close friend Bob Woods, many guys will know Bob. He's been an assistant coach in the National Hockey League for many, many years, and Woody and I are still very close. And when I made the decision to retire, he had said to me, he's like, "Thus, why don't you come and be on the bench with me?" He's like, "I would love to have you on the bench with me and just ease that time into the transition of retiring. But I also think you're going to bring some great value to our guys." And when Woody asked me that, I was all in, Dave. I thought that was going to be really cool, and I did. I enjoyed that a great deal, and it did help ease that transition somewhat. But at the same time, I'd started a business. I was selling hockey equipment all over the world and to pro teams and college teams and youth clubs, and so I was doing both. But I really did enjoy my time behind the bench with Woody and getting an opportunity to coach after my playing days. And fortunately, I was able to somewhat parlay that into coaching Team USA at the World Championships of Inline Hockey and the World Games, and was able to coach internationally for inline hockey, which I'm an absolute huge fan of that game. Um,
Yeah,
I love inline hockey, but I was able to represent our great country and win some gold medals and a bronze medal along the way. It was pretty special.
that's awesome. So in addition to the USA inline, what teams and levels did you coach at?
I really just coached in the East Coast Hockey League with the Mississippi Sea Wolves,
Okay.
and then I coached Team USA, like I say, at the international level, um, and coaching at that level was really never in my plans. Like I said, Dave, and I admired the people that do it. It's not that I didn't want to do it. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. I had a lot of uncles that were entrepreneurs. My mom and dad were. My brother is, and I really loved that side of it of life, the running a business, um, and even though the what I'm doing now, I don't really see it as a business. You know, I still have to file taxes and do all that,
Yep.
which makes it a business.
Yep.
But
Sadly.
yes, exactly. But no, it's I admire the coaches that do it and the coaches that have success because I will tell you, and for all the fans out there listening, um, that's a stressful job. My gosh, that's a stressful job. I mean, especially in this environment that everybody wants to win, everybody is expected to win. And you know, I
Hmm.
was listening yesterday to Sirius XM radio, and they were talking about teams that win 6 out of 7, or lose. Sorry, they lose 6 out of 7, and how instantly the coach goes on the hot seat. I'm like, oh my
Hmm.
gosh, like, can you imagine having a family, a wife at
Yeah.
home, being a provider? You lose 6 out of 7, and all of a sudden you're at risk of losing your job. And maybe the year before, you know, you had an amazing year, but all of
Yeah.
a sudden, but all of a sudden, you know,
It,
you're in that spot, and it's tough. It's tough.
yeah. I
My
mean,
heart goes out to those guys because it's a tough place to be.
it's not hockey related, but I don't know if you follow, Ohio State football at all. I mean, if you go on
Uh,
Twitter at all during the games, if there's one bad play call, then Ryan Day needs to be fired. But he was national championship last year.
yeah,
They played in
and
the national championship game, and it's like, or semifinals or whatever, however far he made it.
yeah,
Um, and it's one mistake anymore is enough to cost a coach's job.
yeah, and you know, it all really comes down to as well for Ryan Day and Jim Harbaugh. They can have the best year in the world, but if they don't beat the other side, let me tell you,
Absolutely.
like,
Yeah.
you know, Harbaugh, how many years did he go 10-1, 11-1, 12-1? But that one
Yep.
was OSU. Right?
Yep.
And all of a sudden,
That's
people
all
are
that
like,
matters.
fire him, get rid of him. And now he's beat them back to back. And I'm sure if Ohio State doesn't beat Michigan this year, people are going to be calling for Ryan Day's job. And it's like, this
Because
guy's
it'd
one of
be,
the
yep,
best
3 years in a
coaches
row.
in college football. Like, I'd
Yeah.
put him in the top three. Like,
Yeah.
just, yeah,
Absolutely.
just breathe. It'll be okay.
Yeah, it's one game.
Yes.
So, do you think that coaching at those levels is kind of what inspired you to get into what you're doing now? Was there something that you saw when you were coaching that you said that you kind of said to yourself, maybe I can help these kids and these players in a different way off the ice? Or what led you to being a life coach?
It's a great question, David. And it really didn't have anything to do with, but as I reflect on it, it really didn't have anything to do with my time behind the bench. But now, as you say that, I knew there was a need because there was myself. I knew other teammates that I played with throughout the years were struggling with certain things. But it sports doesn't offer a culture to put your hand up and ask for help.
Yeah.
And we're slowly starting to change that. And I say slowly because I think a lot of people want to believe that we're a lot further ahead than we are, and I don't believe we are. It still takes a lot for these young men and women to raise their hand. They don't want to go to their coaches because they don't want to lose their scholarship. They don't want to
Yeah.
lose their contract or be traded or sent down or whatever. Um, but when I went through all of what I went through as a player, and then from 2008 to 2016, really through a very dark, lonely period in my life where, and I came out the other side of it, and I was just so compelled to want to help other athletes at all levels because I knew through everything that I had learned, all my growth, all of my healing, that I wasn't the only one. And yet, had you asked me in 2008 if I was the only one, I'd have said, "Heck yeah." Like, everybody else is happy, everybody else is living the dream except for me. And all I learned was that most men and women are doing the same thing that I was doing, is putting on a face, putting on a mask that I was okay. And when people ask me, "Chuck, how you doing?" "Hey, I'm great. I'm great." As soon as you close the door, you just sit there and you cry.
Yeah.
And you cry yourself to sleep. And when you wake up, you don't want to put your feet on the ground. You just want to pull the sheets over your head, cry, and cry yourself back to sleep.
Yep.
And I really quickly realized, Dave, that I was not the only athlete that was going through that. And when I was able to figure a lot of the things out and put my toolbox full of tools to help me deal with this anxiety thing that I had learned so much about, learned how to live with depression, learned how to live with OCD. And I want to make it very clear, when I say I learned how to live with it, it doesn't mean that I don't live with it today, Dave, because I
Mhm.
do. There's days that are still not what I would put in the top 1,000 days of my life. But I now look at those as a gift because it's giving me another tool. It's making me more resilient. I'm learning how to remind myself that I have to take care of me every single day and which tools work on certain days. And I have such a deep desire, such a deep passion to want to reach back and support these young men and women that are coming up behind me to be the best version of themselves so they can enjoy their journey, not just through athletics, but through life. Because let me tell you, when you're living in that dark, lonely place, athletics is one thing, but man, life just it's hard.
Yeah.
And we've lost way too many young men and women that just couldn't do it anymore, but didn't put their hand up to ask for help. And I'm just on a mission now to empower all these young men and women to put their hand up and say, "You know what, Chuck, I'm not okay, and I want to speak to somebody. I want to share with them what I'm going through." And then when they do that, and I'm like, "I know how you're feeling because I went through the same thing," and their eyes get as big as saucers, almost like, "Really, you know what I'm feeling and you know what I'm going through?" And then I explain to them what I've been through, and they understand that I do. And all of a sudden, we have this instant bond. Um,
Mhm.
but it's a gift, and I can tell you for a long time, I didn't think it was a gift, Dave. It
Yeah.
was it was hard, and I used to ask many, many times, and I'm a believer in God, but I used to look up and say, "God, why me? Why in the hell are you putting me through this?" And if I asked once, I asked 100 times, and finally I got my answer. And it was
Yeah.
because I needed to go through all of this so that I could do the work that I'm doing today. And like I said, the journey hasn't always been easy, but I'll tell you, it's been a gift.
Yeah. And I'm happy to see now that leagues like the NHL, that's who I follow mostly, and they're starting to have more, I guess, acceptance and more assistance for these players. An example is Alexander Texier. Last season, he was dealing with an injury, then two members of his family passed away, and he said emotionally and psychologically he just wasn't in a place to be able to focus on his career. And luckily he was able to step away for a year and go back home and recover from that and come back and hopefully, picks up where he left off this season. But it's been nice seeing more and more leagues are becoming accepting of that, because that's something that a lot of us non-athletes see these players as superhuman.
Yes.
They're these physical specimens that go out on the ice, go out on the field, and just dominate in every aspect of what they do. And I give Texie a lot of credit for doing what he did, and Elvis a lot of credit for being public in his struggles. Going back to him, because it helps a lot of people that aren't athletes see, okay, if they're not okay, then it's okay for me not to be. And I think
Absolutely.
that's a big thing, that is a big positive that comes out of sports,
I
is
am,
seeing that side of things.
yes, 100%, Dave. Um, and I want to remind everybody that's listening today that first and foremost, athletes are people.
Yep.
They they have a heart, they have a soul, they have feelings, they have emotions, and yes, a lot of them make a lot of money for what they do. But that doesn't make them superhuman. That doesn't mean that they don't have feelings and that they're not going to go through tough periods in their life. They're just like, I'm just like you. If I met you on the street, I would have no idea if you were
Yeah.
a high level athlete or if you never played. And many people that walk past me and meet me today, they didn't know that I played because I don't share that right out of the gate,
Yeah.
because we're people first. And guys like the two gentlemen that you just mentioned, I'm incredibly proud of both of them for exactly that. And Carey Price is another one, and Jonathan Drouin is another one, and Michael Phelps is another one. My God, Michael Phelps is the most decorated Olympian in world history. And people would often say, "Well, how can he have any issues?" Because he's a human being first.
Yep.
That's why. He has feelings,
Yep.
he has emotions, he has all of these things just like you and I, no different than a mechanic, a hairdresser, um, a flight attendant, a doctor. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what profession or what label you give yourself. We're all humans, and it's okay not to be okay.
Absolutely. That's one of my favorite lines ever, is
Yes,
that it's okay not to be okay.
I'm with you.
Um, so we kind of touched on, I think, a major reason earlier with social media and the internet and all that. But what do you think that why do you think mental health has become such an issue, especially in sports? If we can kind of stick to sports, since this is kind of a
Yeah,
sports based podcast, but um, I think a lot of it'll overlap with everybody else's day to day life. Why do you think that mental health has become such an issue? Obviously, social media is a big issue there. But is there anything else that you see causing that?
I think it comes. Yeah, I think it comes down to two words, Dave. Honestly, is pressure and expectation. The pressure that these athletes are under, and it's not just at the National Hockey League level. It is the kids playing U16, U15, U17, the collegiate players, the junior players. Everybody is under so much pressure to get to the next level, and the
Mhm.
expectation that um, they're supposed to get to the next level, and then they start comparing themselves to other people that are playing at their level or moving to the next level, and it just creates a whole minefield, for lack of better terms.
Yeah.
And and it's almost inhuman to be able to deal with that pressure and expectation. And therefore, and people often, like we talked about a little bit ago, is when they start to compare themselves to other people, they don't feel good enough. How am I going to make it
Hmm.
if I can't do what this guy's doing? Well, that guy's a left winger and he's 15 years older than you are, and he's already been where you are. Like, you don't have to, and now we've got Connor Bedard, right, at 18
Yep.
years old, coming out this phenom. So you're getting a lot of these 16, 17, and 18-year-olds comparing themselves to Connor Bedard, which is completely unfair to themselves. Connor
Yeah.
Bedard is, what are we going to say, maybe a once in a lifetime talent, or
Yeah.
is
And in my
supposed to be a once. We'll
yeah.
have to see what he does at the National League level.
Yeah.
We don't know yet. Um, but the comparison game too, Dave, is just so intense, and
Yep.
so I think a lot of these factors play into it. And when you throw that all into a big pot, I just think it's a lot for any one human being to deal with and not have an
Yeah.
outlet to speak about it. And when they get to a chance to speak about it, they can talk through it and they can understand that the way they're approaching it and their perspective that they need to be Connor Bedard because Connor's 18 and I'm 18, it's just not realistic. Like,
No.
so, so I think those factors are all big time players in it.
Yeah, and I've said to my friends too, I'm almost, I mean, for lack of a better term, worried about even Connor Bedard
Yeah,
because if you look at what he's going through, right? He scored his first career goal this a couple weeks ago, and ESPN puts up a graphic chasing greatness. Connor Bedard won, Wayne Gretzky, however many,
yeah.
remember the goal total right now, but like just the pressure that he's under.
Oh,
I mean, it's almost scary
uh,
to think about.
it is, and everybody's got an opinion. Everybody,
Yep,
and even if he scores 25 this year, somebody's going to say, "Oh, well, that
that's not
wasn't
enough.
very good. Wasn't enough." Somebody else expected him to score 40. Well, if he scores 40, I mean, Teemu Solani scored 76, and he's
Yeah.
supposedly better than Teemu Solani. So the pressure that this young man is under is almost inhuman. Um,
Mhm.
and to my viewing so far, I think he's done a pretty good job of managing it. I
Oh,
do
absolutely.
I understand that Chicago is, when you look from the outside, and neither one of us are behind those closed doors, but um, they're doing a really good job with bringing people in like Foligno, an ex-Blue Jacket,
Yep.
who was the captain, great leader. They brought in Taylor Hall. They've brought in Corey Perry, right, to insulate this young man and
Mhm.
to teach him what it's like every day to be a pro, and so that because let me tell you, this young man at 18 is playing against guys that are twice his age. There's guys
Yeah.
in the league at 36. I mean, Corey Perry's probably close to 36, I think. Anyway, or
Yeah.
in that ballpark. Um, and so, you know, we're not always comparing apples to apples, and I think when we start that comparison game of apples to oranges, apples to grapes, apples to watermelons, whatever you want to call it, um,
Yeah.
it's unrealistic, and we all do it, right?
Yep.
We see the guy that just drove by in the Porsche, and we're driving a Pinto, and we're like, "Phew, that dude's obviously way more successful than me." Well, little do you know that the next time he parks it, that somebody's going to back up to it with a wrecker because he's missed the last 7 payments,
Yeah.
or whatever. Like there's my point is there's so much to the story that we don't know, and
Yep.
it's just unfair to compare ourselves. Look, if you want to compare yourself to anything, look at the man in the mirror. And that was a lesson that I learned the hard way. And that's one that I work on a lot with my athletes now because there's so much noise on the outside.
Yep.
And that is a big player in the mental health field.
So currently being, life coach, doing public speaking, things like that, what is your favorite part of what it is that you get to do?
I love, love, love one-on-one conversations with my athletes. And when you start to see them be vulnerable and you start
Yeah.
to see them open up and you start to for them to realize that it's okay not to be okay, and they get that aha moment like, wow, that felt really good to just say that,
Mhm.
and it's for the first time, right? And you make that heart connection. I love heart connections, and I love making that heart connection where they trust you, you trust them, and you're sharing back and forth. Um, Dave, there's nothing like it. There's
Yeah.
nothing like it. I promise you. It's such a gift. Um, I just love that part of it.
Yeah. And, we met initially at the Ohio AAA Blue Jackets golf outing. I think you were on one of the most fun holes of the day where you had the air cannon shooting golf balls. So that was a little bit more of a relaxed day. So obviously you work with, youth programs like that. Do you tend to focus more on younger players or do you work with guys of all ages?
I work with all ages. Like
Oh,
you said, the Ohio AAA Blue Jackets, which it's such a gift to work with them, with Ed Ginger, Nick Petraglia, all the coaches, all the parents. What an amazing group, and that was a fun day that you and I met,
oh
and
yeah.
and what a
Yeah.
gift it was to meet you.
I
But
appreciate that.
you're welcome. And I work with collegiate programs. I work with junior players. I work with professionals. And it's not just hockey. I have baseball. I have soccer. I have lacrosse. I have wrestling. Now my main thing is hockey because that's what I
Yeah.
was. I played hockey. But what I've learned really, Dave, through all of this is that the sport is the sport, but the the situation for the athlete is a lot the same regardless of the sport they play. And but it's such a gift to be able to work with these young men and women. So many of them are just they're a gift to me. And I
Yeah.
often you can ask any of my clients. I won't share who they are, but if you know any of them, you can ask them, and I will say, "Did you get as much out of that conversation as I did?" Because 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 they're just open and vulnerable and share. And um, yeah,
Yeah.
every one of my clients is a true gift.
That's awesome. So, final question before we kind of get to the more lighthearted, fun questions. What's one piece of advice that you have to an everyday person? Um, you know, obviously, the people that listen to this are not just athletes; they are everyday people. They're listening on their way to work. What is one piece of advice that you have for them that might be struggling with their mental health and don't know even where to start, or um, for more better or worse, might be ashamed of having a mental health issue like anxiety or depression?
Yeah, so there's probably a couple that um, will kind of tag off of each other. And Dave, thank you for asking that question. That's amazing. And the first thing I'm led to share, and this was a hard one for me to learn. Um, you matter. You are the most important person in your life, and if you don't take care of you, who's going to? The world is a busy place, and you're responsible for taking care of you. Make sure that you always take care of you first, because if you do that, you will always have enough for everyone else. And just breathe. Just breathe. It's all going to be okay. Life is happening right in this moment. It's not next week. It's not in 2 weeks. It's not even tomorrow. It's not even this afternoon or tonight.
Mhm.
Life is happening right here, right now, where your feet are. And if you can be present where you are, right here, right now, and just breathe, check in with yourself. What do I need? Chuck, what do you need right now? And I ask myself that question all day, every day. And sometimes the answer is I need a coffee. So I go and I stand at the coffee maker and I make myself a coffee. Sometimes it's I need to go for a walk. I will go outside and I'll go for a walk. Sometimes I just need to do nothing but sit in my chair in my office and just be. And people will probably look at me and be like, "What are you doing?" Nothing. I'm just
Yep,
being right now. And that's okay. And whatever it is that you need, it's okay. It's what you need. It's not what anybody else needs. But don't be afraid to take care of yourself first.
for sure. So that wraps up the questions about you and what it is that you do. I do have 4 questions that I ask everybody who comes on, and it's just fun to get a little comparison.
Yep.
So the first is, what is your favorite sports venue that you have been to?
Probably the old Maple Leaf Gardens. I had an opportunity to go there one time and watch the Leafs play the Flyers when my idol one of my idols growing up, Ron Hextall, played against the Leafs, and to be there to see him play and to do it at Maple Leaf Gardens was pretty special.
That's awesome. What about your favorite venue that you have played in or coached in?
This is gonna be
Either one.
yeah, this is gonna be, for all those people that know I'm a Miami University alum and played hockey at Miami. Of course, I loved playing at Miami, but one of my favorite places that I ever played in was at Yost Arena in Michigan. That
Yeah.
that venue is magical. Um, just the atmosphere, the history, the everything that goes into it. Yost Arena at the University of
Yeah.
Michigan is very special.
And for anybody listening, all my friends know this, and I don't want to hear about everything going on right now with the football team, but I'm a big Michigan guy.
Yeah,
So I love going to Yost. My nephew is 5 years old. He's a huge, huge hockey fan. Lives in Cincinnati. They go to Cyclones games all the time, and we got to take him to a Michigan football game a couple weeks ago, and we he just was in love with all of it, and
yeah,
he didn't believe that it was an actual ice arena. It
yeah.
doesn't look like an ice rink from outside.
No,
It's awesome.
it is flat out. It's awesome,
Yeah.
and anybody that has the opportunity to go watch a game there, if you're a young hockey player, you have a chance to play there, do it. You don't have to be a
Yeah.
Michigan fan. Go. It's an
Yep.
amazing place to watch a game and even a better place to play a game.
And I tell people that all the time.
Yeah,
Even if you're not a Michigan fan,
just
you've got to. If you're a football fan, you've got to go to a game at the Big House.
absolute
110,000, like
absolutely.
just nothing like it.
You're right.
So, so it doesn't have to be something that you played in. It could be something that you remember from growing up, or something like that. But what is your favorite sports memory?
Dave, I have a bunch, but probably at the top of my list would be winning the international gold medals that I won, and I'm gonna kinda put those all together.
Yeah,
Um, Winning the Kelly Cup with Bruce Boudreau was something that stands out in my mind. We beat all odds to win the Kelly Cup back in 1999 with Gabby. Um, and then I'm gonna go back to Michigan. I was able to my senior year, and I believe it was the first time in Miami hockey history, we went into Yost Ice Arena and beat them 5-2 on a Friday night.
that's awesome.
And yeah, and it was against Marty Turco, pretty good goaltender.
That's
Um,
cool.
had a pretty good career.
Absolutely.
They've pumped out some players, and
Oh my
but
gosh.
yeah, right. And hey, the Jackets right now are the
That's
recipient of a few of them. And I tell you what, I think the world of Adam Fantilli.
mhm,
I can't wait to watch this young man when I come to Columbus. I can't wait to watch that young man play in person. But I think there's tremendous upside there, and hopefully I'll get
he's
an
so much
opportunity
fun to
one day
watch.
to yeah, hopefully I'll get an opportunity one day to shake his hand and just tell
Yeah,
him how much I enjoy the gifts that he has and being able to watch him play because he's
I'll
a
say
special player.
I'll say he's one of the hardest working guys on the ice. I mean, last night we were watching a game. I was at the game, and I mean, this play basically felt dead. Felt like it was going to go back down to the other end, and he just kept fighting and ended up, getting an assist on a goal after it, and he just never gives up, and it's so much fun to watch.
Yeah.
But no, I have nicknamed my friends hate it because Michigan fan, but I've nicknamed them the Columbus Maize and Blue Jackets. Um,
That's great. I love that.
there's enough guys. I think we can finally do that. I need to get shirts made.
Yeah.
And final one, if you could attend any sporting event, what would it be?
I think it would be a Hall of Fame induction for a dear friend, whoever it may be, and I think I've
Mhm.
probably got a few very very dear friends that at some point may be up for a Hall of Fame induction, and I would love to celebrate that moment with them.
Absolutely.
I get goosebumps. I could probably tear up thinking of a couple of them, um, and I really do hope they both, two of them in particular, get the opportunity um, to be inducted into the Hall because the work that they've done, one as a coach and one as somebody that was a player but now it works for a players association and has run the PHPA for 30 plus years. Um, I would be just so honored to be able to sit there and give them a hug and listen to them accept their induction into the hall.
That's great. That's great. And that was a nice change from my past couple people I've talked to. It's either been, oh, Browns Super Bowl, Jackets game 7 Stanley Cup finally winning it. So, yeah, it's a great change, but that's probably the best answer I've heard to that.
Well, thank you.
So Chuck, thank you so much for your time. You're doing amazing work. The parents that were with you at the golf outing, just every time a new group came up, they were, just running over to tell people who you are, what it is that you do, and how much you've helped their kids. So I hope, moving forward, I hope your business keeps growing, and you're able to continue to do what it is that you do. But at this time, if there's anybody that you support, any plugs or anything like that that you'd like to give, or just any words of wisdom or anything like that that you'd like to give the listeners, this is your time to kind of say whatever it is that you want to say and talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Well, Dave, first and foremost, I want to thank you for your kind words. You know, the work that I do, um, I have such a passion for it. I love it, and it didn't come probably the most traditional way to for that people get into a career, right?
Mhm.
Um, I almost lost my life in 2008. I just couldn't keep going. I didn't think I could keep going. And I found the courage to ask for help. I found the courage to pick up the phone and say that I wasn't okay. And and by the grace of God, I'm still here. By the grace of God, I get to do this work every single day. and remind people how incredibly special they are, the potential and the greatness that they have within, that there is a light on at the end of the tunnel, and it's going to be okay, because it is. It just put the next foot in front of the other and just keep going. It's going to be okay. And for anybody out there right now that's up against something, because we all are, we're all battling something that nobody knows anything about because we haven't shared it. But just know that there's people out there that love you. There's people out there that care about you. And I want to encourage you to find that strength that I found in 2008, to pick up the phone and make a call and share it with somebody that you love and you trust. Don't ask them to understand it, because they may not, but just tell them that you're not okay. And maybe they can turn to someone and say, hey, I know someone that you can talk to, and get
Mhm.
that ball rolling, because it's okay not to be okay. And
Absolutely.
just again, I just want to remind you that you're loved and cared about, and that there's people there just waiting to love and support you on this journey of life. And it's all going to be okay. Just breathe.
Absolutely. Chuck, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And I hope everything continues going well for you.
Thank you, Dave. Keep up the great work you're doing as well. Um, this was a lot of fun, and you had a lot of fantastic questions. And if I can ever do anything for you, all you have to do is ask. But I really enjoyed this, so thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. For anyone who listened to this episode who may know someone who is struggling with mental health or who may be struggling themselves, please know that there is a whole world of people who love and care about you. As Chuck said in this episode, it's okay to not be okay. Take a breath, reach out to someone who you love, and just talk. It's as simple as having a conversation. And for those who may need some extra help or feel like they have no one to talk to, there are endless resources available. For people who are looking for free crisis counseling, text HOME, HOME, to 741-741. The National Crisis Hotline is available for anyone who is struggling with mental health and substance abuse. Simply call 211. They are available 24/7. And finally, for those who feel like they are at their lowest, the National Suicide and Crisis Hotline is free and confidential. Simply call 988. They are also available 24/7. Please remember that no problem is too small and no one will ever be mad or upset if you reach out for help. Hey guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me on another episode of Into the Stands, the podcast where I unravel the fascinating tales of sports and entertainment personalities. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. A big shout out to our friends over at Around the Fifth Line. It's a Blue Jackets based debate show that you can catch on YouTube as well as on all podcast platforms. If you're craving in depth discussions about the game, they've got you covered. And for the latest hockey news and news focused on the Blue Jackets, head over to thn.com/Columbus, home of the Hockey News Columbus, with articles written by Jason Newland. Stay in the loop with the freshest insights and updates. Follow Jason on Twitter at F1RETheCannon for even more hockey goodness. Connect with us on social media. Follow me personally at the Scoreboard Guy, SCRBRD, and at Into the Stands for the latest on upcoming guests and exclusive behind the scenes content. We love hearing from our community, so drop us a message and suggest guests for future episodes. As we wrap up today's show, let's remember the wise words of both Wayne Gretzky and Michael Scott. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Until next time, this has been the Scoreboard Guy, Dave Fetzer. Thank you for listening.